Welcome back everyone. Welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy. So I hope all of you are doing good, and in fact most of you have given the prelims examination this year and you probably waiting for the result as well. So however, this year for mains examination a very less time left. So therefore it is very important to strategize for the mains examination in an appropriate manner, so that it will be helpful for you to crack the mains examination with ease. So therefore we will be understanding, so what would be the cutoff for the prelims examination this year, who are going to appear for the mains examination, so what should be the most appropriate strategy in these 3 months of time, less than 3 months of time left for the mains examination. So what exactly needs to be done? You might be the fresher or the first timer who are writing the mains examination, or there might be students who have already given the mains examination and they already have the consolidated content. So therefore we will essentially look at the mains strategy particularly. So what we can do, and that ensures us our name in the finalist, at least our name in the interview selected candidates, because it is very important that in these 70 to 75 days you have to strategize the whole preparation in a unique manner, so that you can ace this mains examination, right? So therefore we'll look into it, what are the main subjects that have to be focused, and how to read optional until the results for the prelims examination are out, and what are the areas that we need to focus on, and how to increase our marks in mains examination, right? So we'll be discussing all these different areas in a very comprehensive, in a very detailed manner. And so first of all, let's have a look at this year's prelims examination. You all knew that we have already discussed the answer key for the prelims examination. So I hope you have gone through the answer keys of the prelims examination. So this year it is said that the paper is little bit on tougher side, right? So it is said that moderate to tough. The paper is moderate to tough. So since paper is moderate to tough, it is said that the cutoffs would be lower. And we can also equate this year's paper with the prelims paper that was in 2023, because in 2023 there was a new pattern that was came in, that we have seen in the prelims examination. And apart from that, the CSAT factor in 2023, CSAT was also very tough. So CSAT was tough, and the gender studies paper was also very tough, and because of that reason the cutoff went all the way below 75, right? So in 2023 the cutoff went all the way to 75, but in 2024 it was not the case. In 2024 we have seen the cutoffs go up to 87, right? So because in 2024 the paper was it's like moderate to easy paper. It was a moderate to easy paper, and CSAT was also not very difficult during 2024, and because of that reason, so we have seen a cutoff of 87. So what should be the cutoff of the expected cutoff of prelims examination this year, and who should seriously start preparing for the mains examination right now onwards? Since I have already told you that this paper is moderate to tough range, and apart from that I can also equate this paper with the 2023 prelims examination paper. So I would say that those students who are scoring 78 and 82 range, so those students who are scoring 78 to 82 range, so they have to immediately start preparing for the prelims examination, right? So even if you are getting 75 marks and in fact you have the reservation, so you should immediately start preparing for the mains examination, right? Provided that your CSAT is also fairly good, that you are getting the qualification marks of 33% in CSAT. right? So cutoff should not be or would not be more than 82 this year because of the tougher side that this paper has. So those whoever getting 78 to 82, so they should immediately start preparing for this examination, because what happens if you don't start the preparation early, you would have a very less time, right? So if you are a fresher and if you are a first timer who are giving the mains examination, and if you wait for the prelims results, what happens that you would have a very less time and you would not be able to do your best or give your best for the mains examination. So therefore between prelims and mains examination, time is very, very crucial. It is very important too. So your selection will depend on how wisely you have used these a few days. So therefore those whoever getting 78 to 82 range marks in gender studies and they are also clearing CSAT, you should immediately start preparing for the mains examination, because this year, particularly this year, we have a very less time for the mains examination, right? So therefore, you all knew the pattern of the mains examination, that what topics the mains examination, what are the subjects that the mains examination would consist of. So there are two compulsory papers. So one is your regional language and one is English language, and apart from that you would also have the essay paper as well, and gender studies paper 1, gender studies paper 2, gender studies paper 3, gender studies paper 4, plus optionals, plus 2 optional subjects, right? So you would also have 2 compulsory papers as well, right? So these are actually the subjects. For example, if we talk about the gender studies subjects, now in gender studies paper 1, so it is being said that you need to score around 100 marks, right? So that is very, very important, right? So if you want your name to be in selection list, so you need to score near about 100 marks. So however, we need to prioritize the topics here for the gender studies paper 1. So when we prioritize topics for gender studies paper 1, so firstly there are some topics which are considered as a high yielding topics because more number of questions you get from that particular topics. For example, geography. So geography is very, very important in this particular paper because more than half of the question or around half of the questions from the geography portion alone. So therefore you need to focus appropriately and adequately on the geography subject. And apart from that, the Indian society part, right? So Indian society. So Indian society is also another very important area. From this particular area, you can expect around 50 marks from Indian society. 50 marks from Indian society. And apart from that, the modern Indian history, right? Modern Indian history. So these are 3 very, very important topics for your mains examination. So even if you neglect some portions, for example, the world history or post-independence Indian history, but you should not neglect these topics: geography, Indian society, and modern Indian history. So they are like a fundamental, right? So they are basic topics that you should focus on: geography, Indian society, and modern Indian history as well, right? So for that you might have your short notes. Even if you don't have the short notes, you just try to identify themes, right? So it is very, very important that you have to identify themes from these topics. So how can you identify themes from these topics? For example, you go to the previous year questions, right? So you purchase a previous year question booklet, or you can easily access the previous year questions in UPSC website itself, right? So if I can tell you about the Indian society, so within Indian society there are some topics which are very common and very frequently asked. For example, caste is the topic, and next topic is gender inequality or gender equality. So these are some themes. So these themes, what happens is that whenever UPSC frames a question, they just repeat the themes year after year. For example, another theme I can tell you is globalization. So globalization is also another very important theme. And second, after that, communalism, right? So communalism. So these are some important themes that you have to identify, right? So you just go through the previous year questions and try to identify the themes. So once you have identified the themes of previous year questions from the Indian society section, so what you have to do, you need to make a micro notes. If possible, make a digital notes. For example, if you are a fresher and you may not be able to write everything, you may not be able to do the micro notes, then what you have to do, you have to do the digital notes of micro themes, right? For example, caste system. So when we talk about the caste system, so you should have the definition of caste system, right? So you should have the definition of the caste system, and what are the factors or the reasons which reinforces the caste system in India, right? So, and apart from that, when we talk about the factors which reinforces the caste system, and again, you need to talk about the social factors, you need to talk about the economic factors, and you should also talk about the political factors, right? So all these factors, now when you divide the question, when you divide the answer into these multiple parts, there is a very high probability that you would get a good marks for your answer. So you just have to divide the answer into multiple parts, and that's how you can score very, very good marks. So we have discussed the factors which actually reinforce the caste system, and after that you suggest measures. Right? So there are some measures that have to be taken so that we can reduce the influence of the caste system in the society. And again, you mentioned social factors, economic factors, political factors, and the government policy initiatives. So again, what you did, you divided the answer into the multiple parts, and when examiner actually look at your answer, when examiner makes a comparison of your answer with the answers of other students, so your answer looks more and more appealing, and there is a probability that you would get extra 1 mark for your answer, right? So that's how you can actually make the difference. For example, you have already given the mains examination, but in mains examination you were just scoring around 80 to 85 marks, but imagine that you have increased your marks to 15 marks, right? So in each paper 15 marks, that means around 60 marks increase in your GS alone. So you are getting it. So what you have to do, you just have to identify. This is a very, very effective strategy because these themes are directly taken from the syllabus of the UPSC, and there is no chance that UPSC will go beyond these themes. And even if another question based on another theme comes from the Indian society, you can still use the content that you have already developed for these topics. You're getting it. This will be very, very effective strategy for you to clear a mains examination and also to get a very, very good marks in your examination. So you just have to identify the themes. For example, gender equality, right? So gender inequality or even patriarchy. Patriarchy is also another very important theme based on which the questions are repeatedly asked from this. And another important theme is regionalism, right? Regionalism is also a very, very important theme from which the questions are asked. For example, if I can tell you how to have a micro notes for this. You have identified a theme called regionalism. Now you should have the definition of regionalism. So what is the definition of regionalism? And what are the factors? What are the factors which are mainly contributing for the extreme nature of regionalism? So regionalism to some extent is good. It is okay. But what are the factors which have been contributing to the extreme regionalism? Because extreme regionalism could otherwise lead to the separatist movements. For example, the Khalistani movement. Right? So regionalism would even have its own threats. Now you have to write some threats. So what are the threats of regionalism and how regionalism would weaken national unity and integrity? Remember, when you are having a micro notes, a theme based notes, so also make sure you try to include some examples as well along with these points. Right? So it is very important that when you write the examples, again it creates a very good impression in the minds of the examiner, that there is a high probability that you can score a very good marks in your answer. So I hope you have understood this, right? So this is with respect to Indian society in the gender studies paper 1, right? So however, when we talk about geography, so geography is also a very important area, right? So in geography, what you have to do, again, you need to go through the previous year questions within the geography. For example, in geography, mineral resources and their location. Mineral resources and their location. So this is a very frequently asked question. So they might ask iron and steel, and they might ask coal, and recently lithium has been getting a lot of prominence, so they even ask about the lithium mineral resources and their location. So since you have identified the themes, again you try to have a short notes for that particular thing. Again, I'm telling you, if you don't have the time, you just make a digital notes, right? So if you don't have adequate amount of time, so you just make the digital notes, because with digital notes what happens, you can save a lot of time and you can again revise whatever notes you have already made. Now it's not just about the mineral resources. Now when we talk about the geography, so it consisting of number of factors. For example, glacial retreat. Now again, for glacial retreat, so you make a micro notes, right? So what are the reasons for the glacial retreat or melting of glaciers? What are the impacts of glacier melting? And what suggestions you can give, and what measures that have been already taken at the level of at the global level, right? So these all things should be included in your notes, so that what happens now, when you are revising it, you revise it multiple number of times. Now when you revise it multiple number of times, so see, understand one thing, mains examination is all about finishing 20 questions, right? So completing the 20 questions with the same quality. So maintain that the same quality is maintained throughout 20 questions. And apart from that, when we talk about the mains examination, so it is very important that the quality of content also matters. Now when you revise it multiple number of times, so you can easily reproduce whatever you have read in the exam paper, right? So you can also finish the paper within 3 hours. A lot of students face a difficulty completing 20 questions within 3 hours, and that's where you lose a crucial marks. If you're not able to finish 20 questions in 3 hours, you will lose marks. However, the key here is that what you have to do, you need to have a notes, and you need to revise the notes multiple number of times, and then you can finish the 20 questions in 3 hours, and that's how you can score very good marks. For that, you should have a theme based notes. Please identify the themes. Now when I say about the modern Indian history, for example, imagine about the modern Indian history. Now when I say modern Indian history, now again you try to identify the themes. So what are the important themes? For example, within the Indian national movement or the Indian National Congress, So there are two phases, the extremist phase, sorry, I need to say moderate phase first. So first moderate phase and then the extremist phase. So these are two important themes. You need to know the leaders. You need to know the leaders. Now, why there is a growth of the extremist leaders within the Congress? Why there is a growth of extremist leaders in the Congress? Because there was a failure of the moderate leaders, and the extremist leaders were dissatisfied with the methods adopted by the moderate leaders, right? And apart from that, what are the successes of the extremist leaders? What are the failures of the extremist leaders? And ultimately, you should also have a proper conclusion. Now, whatever question is being asked about the extremists, using the same content, you can write the best possible answer, because you're not lacking the content, you have the content. Now remember, mains exam is all about how you consolidate the content. It's not about reading n number of books. It's not about reading n number of books or whatever books you have read. It doesn't matter, but whatever content you have for these these topics, and how you consolidated the content and how you presented the content in the exam, and that actually matters, and that actually helps you score very, very good marks in your mains examination. And again, moderates, right? So what are the methods adopted by the moderate leaders? What are the methods adopted by the moderate leaders, and who were the moderate leaders? And what are the successes of the moderate leaders, and what are their failures? And you need to balance their success and failure as well. You don't need to go for excessive criticism of the moderate leaders, but there is a need for example, if they have asked you to critically examine or analyze, so then you need to some extent criticize the methods adopted by the moderates as well, right? So you are getting it. So therefore you need to identify such themes. So it's not about extremists, moderates, but within the Indian national movement there is a Gandhian phase also, right? So Gandhian phase. Now apart from Gandhian phase, within the Gandhian phase, so we need to talk about the non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement, quit India movement, right? So these are very, very important movements, right? So questions might be asked from these movements because they are part of the Gandhian struggle. And again, the Khilafat movement and Swadeshi movement, revolutionary nationalism, right? So these are very, very important themes from which questions are very often repeated by the UPSC. I'm telling you the themes, right? So you just have to understand, I'm telling you the themes from which UPSC has been asking questions multiple number of times, right? So for mains examination, since they have given the syllabus, it will be difficult for the UPSC to go outside of the syllabus, right? So therefore that is best reflected in the previous year questions. I hope you have understood the utility of PYQs in prelims examination. And also trust me, the PYQs also have the same utility. For your mains examination as well. So therefore you should try to identify the themes, and you should also have the theme based notes, and that will be a game changer for your mains examination. So I hope you have understood this. And again, if you can come to the gender studies paper 2, right? So we all knew that what are the topics that we have in gender studies paper 2. Now in gender studies paper 2, Indian constitution or Indian polity, right? So Indian constitution and social justice, governance, and IR, international relations. Remember, majority number of questions are asked from Indian Constitution and Indian polity. Again, go to the PYQs and identify the themes. For example, if I can tell you some important themes, one is federalism. So federalism is a very, very important theme. At least you can expect 1 or 2 questions from this theme alone. And again, the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts. 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts, they are also very, very important. You can again expect a question from this. Now, how you can get it? So you can get it through the analysis of the PYQs and also having a notes, having a theme based notes. For example, you already have the notes about the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. So 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act deals with what? So it deals with the panchayats. So when we talk about the panchayats, so the panchayats have been facing a lot of issues, and despite enabling provisions, the panchayats have been facing a lot of issues, and in this context, the Second Administrative Reforms Commission has made a lot of recommendations, so to help revive the Panchayati Raj system. Right? So when you have these short notes, when you revise it multiple number of times, and that's how you can score. So this is how toppers, so this is how the majority number of toppers who consistently score a good marks in their main examination. So do you know that once somebody selected in IPS and again they are appearing for the exam to improve their rank, so since they have these notes, they can revise the notes in a very short span of time, and they can give the exam, and they can also get selected, and they might also improve their rank as well. So you have to do this thing. You need to identify such themes, and you need to work on such themes as well. So as I have already told you, federalism is a very important theme. It is repeated multiple number of times, and there are also very often questions. For example, the institution of speaker, right? So the institution of speaker is also a very important term, and the decline of the parliament, is again a very important theme, right? So functioning of the parliamentary committees, and the judiciary, particularly the basic structure doctrine. So these are very, very important themes that you should try to make such a notes for these themes, because it will be really helpful for your exam. And again, in social justice, you try to identify the themes. In social justice, so when we talk about this, you need to identify the areas like poverty, illiteracy, right? So poverty, illiteracy, and apart from that, the self-help groups, right? So these are the themes which are actually repeated multiple number of times. For example, microfinance is also another very important theme, and that has been identified and even repeated multiple number of times. So when you have short notes for these themes, it will be very, very easier. And governance, particularly civil services, when we talk about the governance, so they ask about the civil services, right? So civil services, lateral entry, right? So you will get this insights from the PYQ questions, and they also ask about the good governance, e-governance, citizens charter, right? So citizens charter, and social audit. So I hope you are getting it. So these are very, very important themes that you can expect questions from these themes, right? So when you are adequately prepared, I'm very sure that you would write the best answer possible, right? So remember, when you are reading continuously, and you are referring to multiple sources, trust me, it will not be helpful for you, right? So it will not be helpful for you in your examination when you are referring multiple number of material. But when you have referred a very few material, when you have already prepared such a theme based notes, remember, you are going to ace the examination very easily, trust me, right? So otherwise it will be difficult for you to actually clear the exam. and you have to remember this, right? So apart from that, you all knew that about gender studies paper 2. So what exactly gender studies paper 2 would have? So again, in gender studies paper 2, it is divided into multiple parts. The Indian economy, economic growth, economic development, employment, infrastructure, and agriculture, and science and technology, environment, disaster management, and security. Now, the trend of the UPSC mains examination, particularly gender studies paper 3. So students are consistently scoring less marks. Right, students are scoring consistently very less marks in gender studies paper 3. Now, what are the reasons for that? Where we need to improve so that we can score good marks? And again, I will tell you to identify the themes of the previous year questions. And again, I will suggest you to make a short notes of this. But here I would like to make a change, that this short notes should be dynamic in nature. It should be dynamic in nature. So I hope you have understood what is dynamic means. So dynamic means that, so you should add the current things, the recent things. For example, the government has come up with a recent policy. If there is any recent data, so you should include all those things in your gender studies paper 3 answers as well as notes. So that's how you can score. And apart from that, there are multiple things, multiple parts in gender studies paper 3. So you need to appropriately allocate adequate time for all these different themes. Now, if I can tell you security, what are the themes that which are very often reflected? Now, terrorism is very often reflected. Left-wing extremism is also very often reflected in your papers. And apart from that, insurgency is also very often asked. So therefore, you can say that these themes are very often reflected. So you have to identify these themes and you need to get them correct as well, right? So this is actually how you can score a very, very good marks in your answers. So once you're focused on all these themes. Now, apart from that, when we talk about answer writing, so again, when you are writing answers, so there are important areas that you should focus on, right? So once you focusing on these areas, for example, so one thing I would tell you is that focus on question. So what exactly is asked in the question and what is the directive word, right? So directive word, so you should also know the directive word as well. So what is the directive word that has been given and what is the question? For example, students very often what they do, sometimes something is asked in the question and they write something else, right? So you have to adequately focus on whatever is asked in the question, and apart from that, you should also understand the directive word which is given in the question. And apart from that, what you have to do is make sure practice as many answers as possible. Answer writing practice is very, very important, right? So this should be given, like how you are preparing a theme based notes, answer writing practice should also equally be given a same importance, right? So if you practice writing answers regularly, you would finish the paper within just 3 hours, right? So you will finish writing answers to all these questions within 3 hours itself. So therefore, answer writing practice is also very, very important. Now, apart from answer writing practice, what you have to do, now make sure the answers are not too static, they are dynamic in nature. So what does dynamic in the sense? So dynamic exactly means that you write examples, you add important data, and apart from that, you also link them with important policies that the government has recently undertaken. Now, apart from that, you should also draw diagrams, right? So relevant diagrams, so that actually makes your answer stand out from the others answers. So all these are very, very important, but you need to do them while doing the answer writing practice, right? So you can see here, structuring of the answer is very important, because in recent times in UPSC mains questions there are multiple structures in a single question. So you have to structure the answer. So structuring of the answer is very, very important, and make sure the structuring is logical and in a coherent manner, right? So for example, you have written one part of the answer and the other part of the answer which is not relevant to the question, or which is not at all relevant to the first part of the answer. So therefore the structuring of the answer should be more and more coherent, and you need to focus on that area as well. And secondly, use simple and concise language. So very simple language, and you have to make sure that words should be concise, right? So words should be concise. So use less number of words rather than using words which are not necessary, right? So which are not necessary. So make sure that you need to use simple and concise language to convey your thought, so that the examiner will understand whatever you are conveying in a very easy manner. And apart from that, try to provide relevant and accurate information. Don't provide the inaccurate, irrelevant or false information in your answers, because if examiner goes through such information, it actually creates a negative impression about you. So therefore, don't try to write the irrelevant information. Try to present the accurate information so that it can create a good impression in the examiner. So apart from that, there should be a critical analytical thinking when you're writing an answer. So make sure that it's not a mechanistic answer, right? It's not a mechanistic answer. It's not that you are writing answer since they have asked just for the sake of writing. You don't write the answer, but you need to involve in it, and you need to understand the key demand of the question, and you need to address the key demand of the question as well. And don't avoid from the topic, and this is the very big mistake that aspirants very often do. So once they start writing the answer, they immediately start deviating from the question. So avoid this, right? So avoid deviating from the topic. So stick to the topic, whatever you are writing, so that is within the limits of the question itself. So don't deviate from the topic. And apart from that, you need to articulate the ideas very, very clearly, and try to present examples, facts, figures, data. So they are very, very important, because they could enrich your answer. They create good impression in the minds of the examiner about your answer, and there's also a probability that you would score very, very good marks in your answer. So if you present all the examples, data and figures. So what I would like to tell you is that make sure there should be a micro notes, a micro theme based notes. And apart from that, practice answer writing more. Practice answer writing more. So as much as possible, and revise the micro notes as many number of times as possible. Try to revise this micro notes. And also answer writing practice you need to do as regularly as possible, because it will equip you to face the exam conditions within 3 hours, and you will also write the answers 20 questions within 3 hours itself, right? So it's just 5 days till a prelims exam took place, and in 10 more days we can expect the results. So within this time, so I would like to suggest you to finish the optional subject, right? So complete the optional subject, because optional is very, very important. Now also remember that optional plus essay plus GS4, so they are actually the crux. So if you want a selection, you should focus on optional, essay and GS. And in recent times, essay also students are getting very less marks, so therefore essay has to be adequately focused. And what is the exact demand of the essay topic, you need to understand. And So we will also have a session on this, right, so that we can understand what exactly is the demand of the essay and how to approach the essay. So we'll have a session on this as well. And general studies paper 4, and if you write well, so generally this paper is very lengthy. This paper is very lengthy. So therefore, if you are able to finish the paper on time, if you are able to attempt all the questions, I can assure you, you can score around 120 marks in this paper. And similarly, optional is also very important till results will be out. So you just focus on the optional, right? So you do as much as you can, you start revising it, and you should also go through the PYQs of your optional subject as well, right? So it would certainly help you to clear the examination with ease, right? So I hope you have understood all these things, and if you have any further assistance, so you just contact us and we will provide you all necessary guidance, and we will also provide you the mentorship as well, personalized one-to-one mentorship as well, and along with that the answer writing support as well. So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much.